Joining us today for bonus conversations on the coast is Jeff Smith. Jeff is the author of a book called Bone, out from Boneville, just recently published by Scholastic Incorporated, and it is what the trade now calls, I believe, Jeff, a comic novel?
A graphic novel.
Excuse me. Right away, I made a mistake. All right. Graphic novel, excuse me.
That's all right, Jim.
The book itself has been around, if you'll excuse me, the expression, in one form or another since 1991.
Yes,
that's right. And you got to writing this book because you couldn't help yourself. You started drawing comic strips, and you had a 4-year reign with the student newspaper and stuff at Ohio State University.
Yeah.
In 1986, you co-founded something called Character Builders, an animation studio.
Yeah.
Is that still around?
It was around up until just this year. It changed into a different company, so it's still around. It has a different name now, though.
Okay, and then in 1991, according to the notes I have, you launched a company called Cartoon Books,
right,
to publish comic books.
Right.
And Bone, what is called a comedy adventure about 3 lost cousins from Boneville, was launched in 1991. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, now, is Cartoon Books still around?
Yes, Cartoon Books is around. It's my company, and it employs 4 people full-time.
Okay.
And for the last 12 years, all we've done was publish Bone.
Oh, my gosh.
It was a full-time job for all of us, because we license toys and T-shirts, and it's also published in 15 languages. So
oh my gosh,
with printers and other publishers, and about twice a year, my wife and I go to Europe to promote the comics in the different languages.
Oh, that's great.
It's fun, yeah.
So one could say that this is one of the most successful graphic novels ever.
It is one of them, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a handful that are very successful and are maybe even known, by non-comics readers, like Mouse by Art Spiegelman.
Okay.
The Dark Knight Returns, the Batman story by Frank Miller. There's a couple.
Now, I need to ask at this point a stupid question. What is the difference between a comic book and a graphic novel? I mean, there are obvious similarities.
Well,
what's
clearly
the difference?
A graphic novel has a much better name.
Absolutely.
To be honest, I actually don't like the term graphic novel.
Oh, you don't?
No, it seems sort of like an attempt by comic books to sound more acceptable
and important.
And more important.
Yeah.
Exactly. That being said, I mean, to me, it's still a comic book.
Okay.
It's just a big one. However, like I said, there is a difference between a comic book and a graphic novel.
And what would that be?
Well, the difference is that a comic book, and if you remember them, they haven't changed that much.
No.
They're usually about a superhero or some kind of a hero, and it's it's usually run by a big company, and the editor decides what the story will be about. There's a writer assigned to it. An author is brought in to pencil it. Someone else inks it. Someone else colors it. Someone else letters it.
Uh-huh.
And it's a fairly big assembly line process, which their main goal is to set up an endless series of adventures that you can go in and buy once a month and follow your hero's story. Graphic novels are like real books. They are usually one author's vision, or one writer. It's usually the same person who draws it.
Okay.
And it has a beginning, middle, and end. And you have a complete book that's meant to stand on its own, just like a novel.
And you don't have to wait for next month.
Because there isn't one.
One of the things said in the promotional stuff from Scholastic for Graphix, Grapix, which is their series of graphic novels forthcoming.
Yes, their imprint too.
Yeah, is that Graphix is going to focus on creator-driven books, and that's what you're talking about.
That is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So, in the case of Bone, this is a story that I started 10 years ago, and I've been working on it. In fact, I actually finished it just last summer. And now Scholastic's picking up and is reissuing it in color. But it's I'm writing it, I'm drawing it, and it's one story from the beginning to the middle to the end throughout the entire 1,300 pages of the story.
Wow.
It's just one story. Now, Scholastic, had to split my story up into like 9 books, so that's what they're doing. There's 9 books. The first one's out now, and the second one's out this summer, and then as soon as we can get the third one colored, we'll get it out.
Yeah, I think the second one is due in August. Is that what I read?
Yeah.
And there's 9 altogether as they break it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And the ending in the 9th one will tie it all the way back to the very first book.
Oh, wow. Well, what I want to get to in the next segment that we'll do next week is I want to talk a little bit more about going with Scholastic and what it means and what do you think it's going to do for your book and the genre as a whole.
All right, I can't wait.
This has been Bonus Conversations on the Coast. We'll join you next week.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Joining us again this week for Bonus Conversations on the Coast is Jeff Smith. This man can draw and he can write and he does graphic novels. And the question is, who said about his book, Bone, "I love Bone. Bone is great"? What's the answer to that question, Jeff?
That, Jim, is the quote on the back of the book from Simpsons creator Matt Groening.
Yeah.
Yes, he said that.
Was he sober?
Yeah. Yes, he actually said it in an interview. Someone was asking him what books he read. This was a few years ago, back when I was doing the books myself, and he said that, and I called him up and I said, "Can I put that on the back of the book?" He said, "You got it."
He is.
I was very excited.
He is obviously a genius of sorts.
Oh,
but I've spent some time with him as a media escort years ago when The Simpsons was just taking off, and I thought of him and I remember him as a charming, funny, and very modest guy.
Yes, and he still is.
Yeah.
I spoke to him. Well, it's been a couple of years since I last saw him face to face, but he's still that way. He's still that he's very easygoing. He brings his kids by our little booth when we go to a comic book show.
Oh, great!
In San Diego or something.
Oh, that's great.
He's very cool, and his kids like Bone.
I said at one point you're now married to Scholastic, and one of the things that it should do for you, I assume, is that it will bring Bone and the other books that will come back and will come around in this series and present graphic novels to a younger audience. Is that an expectation?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I did not originally write Bone with children in mind. I just kind of was doing how do I say this? Like, I was picturing a more general audience.
Yes.
The kind of audience that would read the newspaper.
Correct.
And I had a general audience feel to it, but I was also made some of my jokes were kind of, I thought would make an adult laugh, but nothing inappropriate for a child. But then over the years, as I would go to comic book shows or do bookstore signings, I started noticing that people were coming in and bringing, first it was just all guys. I mean, that's all there were in comic book world. It was just a bunch of guys.
Yeah, a bunch of guys. Let's go and draw.
Yeah, well, they started bringing their girlfriends and then their children. And their children started growing up because I was drawing this for 12 years.
Okay.
And now I've got all these kids are reading it.
No, that's good.
So so I am kind of thinking that Scholastic will take it to children on a much broader level. And with their Harry Potter book, I mean, they reach crossover audiences.
That's true. That's true.
That was kind of important to me because I've had other publishers approach me before and wanting to do Bone as a children's book, but just as a children's book. And I said, well, I don't want to lose my adult readers because I love my adult readers.
Gosh, no. No, and I've read quite a bit of Volume 1 out from Boneville, which is the book currently available from Scholastic. Plug. And it is, in some senses, a nice adult book. And I was thinking as I read it that it's going to be a reach for kids, but then you think of Harry Potter. And, what are you talking about when you talk about reach when it comes to kids? If they like it, boy, they'll reach like crazy.
Well, when I just did a bookstore swing through the West, and we were in San Francisco last week.
Yes.
I had a number of 5- and 7-year-old kids coming up to me with their parents, and they had read the entire 1,300-page book.
Wow.
And like twice. And
the whole thing, the one that comes from your from your house.
The monster. That's
gosh.
Of a dictionary or something.
Ooh.
Yeah, and these little 7-year-olds have read it twice, and it is kind of Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter like, where it gets dark in places,
doesn't it?
And they love it. I asked the kids, "Do you like it?" And they're like, "Yes." I can't believe it. That's just a bonus for me, though.
Yeah,
I said, I'm shooting for like a Charlie Chaplin meets the Lord of the Rings kind of.
Good Lord. But
maybe the Three Stooges meets the Lord of the Rings. That might be more appropriate.
I like that. The three Stooges. who are Phone Bone, and Smiley Bone.
Right.
They're good Lord, they're banned from their homeland of Boneville.
That's right.
Okay.
They're gone out from Boneville.
They got out, and the cousins find themselves mysteriously trapped in a wonderful but often terrifying land filled with secrets and dangers and special new friendships. They are soon caught up in adventures beyond their wildest dreams.
Yeah.
And that is really, really.
That's what happened to me when I moved out of my parents' house.
the same feeling.
I found myself in a land filled with wonderful and terrifying people.
Well, when we get back to Bonus Conversations on the Coast next week, we'll get some more of that wandering around in the land far from home, a little scared but dedicated to adventure. This has been Bonus Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at JimFosterCoc or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Once again, joining us for Bonus Conversations on the Coast today is Jeff Smith, the wonderful author of Bone, Out from Boneville, which is a book published by Scholastic, originally published by Mr. Smith himself way back in 1991. And it is the first volume of how many volumes?
9.
9. And they're going to be issued on a pretty fast basis, aren't they? The next one is due out in August.
Hopefully, at the very least, every 6 months.
Every 6 months.
Yeah. So they were already speeding it up.
Graphics has been around a while, so critics have had a shot at it. Neil Gaiman, New York Times bestselling author of American Gods. Jeff Smith can pace a joke better than almost anyone in comics. His dialogue is delightful, so are all his people, not to mention his animals, his villains, and even his bugs. Okay. Now, I've never before had an author on this program who is praised for bugs as a literary device. So what is that all? Now, I've read part of the book, and there are 2 forms of bugs.
Yeah.
One is an ordinary-sized bug, which you can barely see next to the other characters. And then there are big bugs.
Yeah, giant bees.
Giant. They're huge.
Giant aphids.
Yeah. Now, the bugs... do they go... I want to know, does the little bug ever come back?
He does. He comes back, and he plays a very important role.
Praise the Lord.
At the end of the book, because, of course, all 9 books are one big story.
Okay.
So at the end, the bug plays a very important role. It
does suggest, seriously, that your mind is a little weird, but it's it's very comprehensive.
I think humor comes from chaos and shock. So, especially if you're kind of with the one main Bone character, I try to get the world out of his control as fast and as often as I can. And nothing does that like coming face to face with a giant bug, especially if the bug has good comic timing.
Yes. And he scares the hell out of you.
Yeah. And it's just weird.
Okay. Book list. writing about it, about Bone, said, like Pogo, which is a hell of a good company, has a whimsy best appreciated by adults, but kids can enjoy it too. And like Barks Disney Duck stories.
That's Carl Barks, the guy.
Oh, okay.
The famous duck guy who drew the best Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck.
Bone moves from brash humor to, this says grapping adventure. I'm sure they mean gripping adventure.
Well, there's grapping.
I like grapping.
Well,
yeah. Let's talk about grapping. What kind of adventure is that? Well, it moves from humor to gripping adventure in a single panel, and that is, I think, part of the charm of what you've done. We're going along and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and boom, something comes at us that is totally unexpected. And the first couple of times you do that, I was angry. But after a while, I realized that's your stuff. That's your style.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. There's an interesting commentary from a medium I never heard of before called the New Music Monthly. You said that was a college publication?
Yes, it's a very hip college music magazine. Usually includes like a little floppy CD with the magazine so the kids can hear like the most newest, hippest stuff.
Oh, okay.
The most grapping stuff.
Okay, and your book, Bone, was reviewed by someone who refuses to be identified except with the letters CMJ.
Actually, his name was Douglas Walk, but yes.
CMJ, that figures. Douglas Walk. Yeah, that makes sense. Boy, oh boy. Is that hip, huh?
Yes, that's very hip.
Bone,
I actually like that review a lot.
Bone, he says, has the multi-level writing and artwork of the best Chuck Jones cartoons or early Disney movies. It's overflowing with subtext about conflicting philosophies of power, cultural imperialism, and political responsibility, though not enough to get in the way of its silly fun. And it's the business of not getting in the way. That's your genius, it seems to me.
That is my favorite quote because he nails it. Mm-hmm. He's got all the different things going on, but the silly fun to me is the most important. Like, I don't want to spend a bunch of time trying to, push some message forward. In fact, I go to a lot of trouble. Pardon me, my dog is growling right now.
That's quite all right.
He doesn't agree with what I'm saying.
We accept.
I don't want to. Okay.
We accept dog growls here. It's the whinnying of horses that we don't allow.
Oh, that's good.
If you don't have a horse, don't worry.
Yeah. So, but he gets it. I mean, he sees that the silly fun is the most important thing, and that there's all sorts of conflicts going on as well. And when a little kid reads it, he's not going to see any of that. The power plays by different characters. He's just going to see the giant bugs and foam bone falling off of cliffs, things like that, which is all the stuff I loved when I was.
Well, they'll get the stuff that's there. They're going to love it, and they'll educate their parents and their teachers, and their parents and the teachers will find the serious stuff between the lines, so to speak, and they'll all have a very, very good time.
Yeah, it was the librarians that kind of brought Bone to the attention of the real world.
We've had a very good time talking to you, Jeff Smith, about Bone, published by Scholastic. This has been Bonus Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.